Some guys say that fishing vertical is too slow, too tedious, and downright boring. Well, you know what I find to be slow, tedious, and boring? Not catching anything, not getting bit, never getting to set the hook. That's tedious. That's boring. Getting vertical on them is one of the best ways I know to eliminate or at least minimize that tedium and boredom by turning a no-bite day into a 20 or 30-bite day. This video isn't going to help you catch more on the easy days. When the fish are chasing and chewing, there's no need to get vertical on them. But on those tough midwinter post-frontal days when it's cold and windy, the current is barely moving, and the cloud cover is minimal or non-existent, that's when fishing straight down under your rod tip can save your day. I don't expect to catch a big one doing this. Not that I haven't gotten some good ones under the rod tip, but it just doesn't happen that often. But as far as catching numbers, when the usual stuff isn't getting the job done, especially under post-frontal conditions, fishing vertically can make a no-bite or few-bite day into a decent day. As you can see, I use medium-action spinning gear spooled with light braid for vertical fishing schoolies. I prefer 10-pound braid, but I believe that's 20 I'm using in this video. Thinner line allows the bait to get down faster, and a quality braid like Suffix 832 provides a lot better feel for sensing those inevitably light bites. And with braid that thin, there's absolutely no need to use a fluoro or mono leader between the braid and the lure. I just tie the braid directly to the jig head. I also crush the barb on my jig hook with pliers to make for easier and quicker releases. As far as the lures themselves, I like a no-frills minnow imitation between 4 and 5.5 inches long. I typically do best with a lure that has a pearly white belly offset with a somewhat darker blue, gray, or dull green back. Just a simple baitfish looking deal. On occasion, I might use a 1/4 ounce jig head with a 4-inch bait, but it just takes so long to get down there, so I usually go with a 3/8 or 1/2 ounce. Here's a few of the lures I typically go to when checking on the vertical bite, starting with a 4-inch finesse fish on a 3/8 ounce finesse head. Sometimes the heftier profile of the 4.5-inch freaky fish shown here on a 1/2 ounce head from Japan seems to draw more attention than the slimmer body of the finesse fish. This well-chewed and battle-scarred IU-colored 5 3/4 inch finesse fish on a 1/2 ounce head is the one I was actually using in this video. I've caught stripers fishing straight down in as little as 15 to 18 feet of water, but other than a few outlier catches, most of my vertical fishing in the winter is in 25 to 40 plus feet of water. Obviously, you want your bait to be hanging in the middle of a whole lot of fish. I rarely even think of going vertical unless the fish are really stacked in a band at least 10 feet thick, in contact with, or at least close to, the bottom. When I drop my bait into the depths, when the line stops flowing from the spool and what's between the rod tip and the surface is just hanging limp, I know my lure is on the bottom. I'll slowly tighten the line without lifting the lure from the bottom. Once the line is taut, I'll give the reel handle one quick full revolution. That jumps my bait about 3 feet very suddenly. At the end of that jump, I let the line get tight again and then just hold it there for 5 seconds or so before starting a series of occasional small twitches with the rod tip. How many times and how frequently I twitch it vary. I'm constantly experimenting to find what type of movement they're prone to respond to. Sometimes hanging more or less motionless in the water generates the bites. Sometimes most of the bites will come a few beats after it settles down from a twitch. I just keep varying the cadence until something clicks. If I go through a series of twitch and rest moves without a bite, it's time to rocket the lure up another turn of the handle. Now it's 6 feet above bottom. I'll go through another random series of twitches and rests, always trying to vary the cadence of the lure's activity. Depending on the thickness of the band of fish, I might go through 2, 3, even 4 more depth changes. Whatever it takes to end up with the lure 1.5 to 2 feet above the top of the bulk of the fish. Why? Because stripers like to feed up. If I still haven't gotten bit, I open the bail and let line out to find bottom again. This time that first jump will only be a half turn instead of a full turn. Now, the points at which I let the lure hover and dance will be 18 inches offset from the depths I fished on the first vertical pass. If, heaven forbid, I go through that whole sequence 3 or 4 times without so much as a maybe, I have to conclude that the fish under me are either not stripers or absolutely off feed, and I'll move. Some days it seems like the fish near the edges of a big school bite best. Other days I do best right in the middle of the thickest mass of fish I can find. Finally, what happens when you release a fish back into the school? Well, watching what happens on the depth sounder hundreds and hundreds of times over the years, I know that most of the time, unless it's badly injured, the fish you released dives straight back down to the bottom, as identified by the red arrow in this screenshot. You can also see in the screenshot that the school appears to thin out and compress toward the bottom as the released fish approaches. I theorize that there's some alarm or fear pheromone involved, warning the other fish off. But pretty much by the time you straighten out your lure and line and let it sink all the way back down, that hole in the school has filled in and all is back to normal. There is absolutely no charge for a swing and a miss. In fact, you may be surprised to find how often missing a fish results in a follow-up hit shortly after the lure settles back into position. Whether it's the same fish or not is moot. Somebody down there couldn't believe how dumb that minnow was to come right back after nearly being eaten and moves in for the kill. Thanks for watching.